The battle for Mount Hyjal wasn't over. Azeroth wasn't safe from Archimonde and the Burning Legion. In desperation, Tyrande reached for the weapon they needed, a weapon that had spent the last 10,000 years in a prison, and one that would finally turn the tide of war. If this is your first time visiting the channel, welcome. My name is Quaylen, and I'm in the middle of abridging the World of Warcraft Chronicle series. That means I'm taking the lore contained within these books and condensing it even more than it already is. I'm not diving into the deep details or the novels that have more information, just sticking to what's written in the books. So again, apart from what you read in the title of the video or saw in the thumbnail, I'll be sharing other sections of lore that may not be related to what grabbed your attention in the first place. In essence, I'm telling the story in order as the books tell it. Currently, we're on Volume 3, but if you want to start from the beginning, then I suggest clicking on the link in the tab up above or in the description down below. That will lead you to a video that contains all 10 episodes covering the lore in Volume 1. But if you're already caught up with the story, then let's continue our journey into the tales of Azeroth. 10,000 years of imprisonment had pushed Illidan to the edge of sanity, but his isolation had also given him time to reach a critical conclusion. Azeroth could never win a purely defensive war against the Legion. If the demons were merely repelled, they would simply return again and again, since any demon slain on Azeroth would eventually reform within the Twisting Nether. The only way to permanently destroy the Legion's forces was to strike them within the Nether itself, or in places saturated with its energy, meaning the war needed to be carried into the Legion's own domain. Upon his release, Illidan had no interest in working with other Night Elves. He hadn't forgiven them for his imprisonment, and he knew they would never trust his judgment or his warnings. They would see only a madman or a traitor. He stormed into Hyjal's war-torn forest with a singular purpose: to gain the power and knowledge needed to defeat the Legion. Sensing immense fell energy radiating from northern Ashenvale, he followed it into Fellwood, where the first being to block his path was not a demon, but a human reeking with death. Acting on the Lich King's orders, Arthas had joined the Legion's invasion of Kalimdor to secretly sabotage it from within, subtly steering the Scourge into disobedience to slow the demon's advance. These efforts were only minor setbacks, so Arthas began looking for a way to deal real damage to the Legion by eliminating Tichondrius and the Skull of Gul'dan, which were corrupting Ashenvale and creeping toward Hyjal. Killing Tichondrius himself would expose his treachery to Archimonde, so Arthas needed someone else to do it. When he encountered Illidan's Stormrage tearing through the woodlands, he recognized an opportunity. Illidan's hunger for power made him the perfect tool. In Fellwood, Arthas baited Illidan with knowledge of the Skull of Gul'dan, warning him of Tichondrius' presence nearby. Illidan, already sensing the immense power radiating from the forest, left Arthas behind to pursue it. After cutting down a trail of demons, Illidan found the skull and discovered it held not just power, but the memories of Gul'dan himself. Rather than merely draw on its energy, he consumed it entirely, transforming into a demon, horned, winged, and infused with Gul'dan's knowledge of Draenor and the Tomb of Sargeras. With this new power, Illidan hunted down and destroyed Tichondrius, dealing a major blow to the Legion and halting the spread of fell corruption beyond Fellwood. Despite this victory, Illidan's transformation horrified Malfurion and Tyrande, who saw him as having become the very thing the Night Elves were fighting against. Malfurion banished him from their lands, and Illidan accepted it without protest. He had his own war to fight, one he believed mattered more than any single battle at Hyjal. Before we continue, I'd like to mention that if you're enjoying this content, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Also, if you feel inclined to support the work that I'm doing, you can check out my membership options here on YouTube or on Patreon. I'm really grateful for all of those who have supported this massive project that I've been working on for quite some time now, and I do offer early access to all those people who have signed up. So if you're interested, check out the links down below, and let's get back to the story. As the Legion ascended Mount Hyjal toward the Second Well of Eternity, thousands of Night Elf sentinels, druids, forest spirits, and the combined Horde and Alliance refugees gathered to defend the mountain. It was the largest gathering of races since the War of the Ancients, but the defenders were outnumbered and fractured. Tyrande in particular distrusted the Horde and Alliance, blaming them for leading the Legion to Kalimdor in the first place. Sensing the disarray, Archimonde believed victory was within reach, unaware of Medivh's presence and his plans. Medivh brought Thrall, Jaina, Tyrande, and Malfurion together in a tense meeting, eventually convincing Tyrande to set aside her prejudice for the greater good. The factions unified, but brute force alone would not be enough to stop Archimonde. Malfurion proposed a desperate solution, igniting the powerful enchantments within the world tree Nordrassil, granted by the dragon aspects, to unleash an explosion capable of destroying Archimonde and the Legion. The cost would be devastating. The Night Elves would lose their immortality and immunity to sickness forever. With no better option, the defenders agreed. While Malfurion and his druids prepared the ritual, the rest of the Alliance dug in at Hyjal's summit, fighting a brutal, costly battle to buy them time against the relentless tide of undead and demons. Thousands died, but their sacrifice was not in vain. By the time Archimonde reached Nordrassil, the druids had completed their work. Wisps emerged from the surrounding forest, and at Malfurion's command, channeled their energy into the world tree rather than attacking the demon lord directly. A massive shockwave erupted from Nordrassil, instantly destroying Archimonde along with most of his forces and shattering the Legion's hopes of claiming the Second Well of Eternity. The defenders launched an immediate counterattack, wiping out nearly all the remaining Legion forces in Kalimdor. Arthas narrowly escaped with what remained of the Scourge, retreating back to the Eastern Kingdoms. Afterward, the Horde and Alliance refugees departed Hyjal to seek new lands, their fragile alliance intact, but untested. Tyrande and Malfurion stayed behind to rebuild a landscape left in ruins. Nordrassil itself had been damaged in the explosion, its roots withered, and its connection to the Emerald Dream weakened. Though the tree would eventually heal, the dragon aspect's enchantments were gone for good. The Night Elves would now age, sicken, and die like any other mortal race. From afar, Medivh watched the war's end with relief. The Legion's invasion had failed and Azeroth was safe, at least for now. He knew other threats still loomed, but his own power was fading and his time in the physical world was nearly over. The responsibility of protecting Azeroth now belonged to its people. Medivh had shown them the strength found in unity, and with nothing left to do but hope they would carry that lesson forward, the last guardian of Azeroth vanished. Despite the devastating defeat at Hyjal, Kil'jaeden believed all was not lost. The Lich King, several Dreadlords, and the Scourge remained, with thousands of undead still controlling Lordaeron and capable of rebuilding quickly. But when Kil'jaeden tried to command the Lich King to mount another assault, the entity refused outright. The Lich King saw the defeat at Hyjal as his chance to break free from the Legion. He rallied Arthas, Kel'Thuzad, and the rest of the Scourge in Lordaeron and turned them against his former Dreadlord overseers, Balnazzar, Varimathras, and Deathrok. The Dreadlords stood no chance against the undead onslaught and fled into the Plaguelands, cloaking themselves with dark magic to escape detection. With his handlers driven off, the Scourge now answered to no one but the Lich King himself. Kil'jaeden had always suspected betrayal might come, but he had vastly underestimated how cunning his weapon truly was. The Lich King had concealed his growing strength for years, playing the obedient servant while his power expanded alongside the Scourge. The chance to use the Lich King for another invasion of Kalimdor was gone, and worse, he now stood as a direct threat to the Legion itself. If left unchecked, his conquest of Azeroth would make future demonic invasions nearly impossible. Kil'jaeden saw only one option left: destroy the Lich King, and he sensed a demon on Azeroth powerful enough for that task, one who had sided with the Legion during the War of the Ancients. Illidan's transformation into a demon by consuming the Skull of Gul'dan drew Kil'jaeden's attention. The Demon Lord offered him anything he desired in exchange for destroying the Lich King, mistakenly believing Illidan would gladly become his servant for a taste of power. Unaware of Illidan's true goal of annihilating the entire Legion, Kil'jaeden never suspected the depths of deception he was dealing with. Illidan buried his real intentions and accepted the offer, seeing it as a chance to gather intelligence on the Legion, while also eliminating a threat he viewed as just another Legion-forged weapon. The sooner the Lich King was destroyed, the sooner he could refocus entirely on the Legion itself. Knowing a direct assault against the Scourge's vast numbers was impossible, Illidan turned to sorcery instead. The Skull of Gul'dan had revealed knowledge of the Eye of Sargeras, an artifact capable of amplifying his magic enough to strike the Lich King from afar. The problem was its location, the Tomb of Sargeras. Deep within the Broken Isles, a place once part of the ancient Night Elven Empire, but now largely unknown to him. Illidan needed allies to retrieve the artifact, but his banishment meant he couldn't turn to the Night Elves for help. Worse still, he was being actively hunted. The Watchers, furious that Tyrande had freed him at the cost of their order's own dead, were determined to recapture him, none more so than their fierce and unyielding leader, Warden Maiev Shadowsong, who viewed Tyrande's actions as nothing short of treason and would never rest until Illidan was imprisoned again. Knowing it was only a matter of time before the Watchers tracked him down, Illidan had little choice but to reach out to old allies from his past, the Highborne sorcerers. When the original Well of Eternity imploded 10,000 years ago, the Highborne sorcerers and their queen Ashara were pulled into the ocean depths, where the old gods offered them salvation in exchange for eternal servitude. The Highborne accepted, and were twisted into the serpentine Naga, their hearts consumed by hatred. Illidan had only heard rumors of their fate, but when he cast a spell calling out to them, a force of Naga led by Lady Vash emerged from the depths and pledged themselves to him. The Naga did not come out of loyalty or respect for Illidan's power. They came because the old gods commanded it. The old gods had taken interest in Illidan, recognizing that his quest to destroy the Lich King would ignite a new war engulfing the undead, the world's nations, and the Legion alike. Such widespread chaos would leave Cho'Gall and his cultists free to work toward awakening the old gods with little resistance. Illidan was useful to them, and the Naga were sent to ensure his campaign succeeded. Though if he ever became a liability, the old gods would simply order his death. Either way, they were confident he could be used to plunge the world into a new age of conflict. With his new Naga allies, Illidan crossed the sea and reached the Broken Isles, a place he barely recognized after 10,000 years of isolation. With Maiev and her Watchers in pursuit, he pressed into the Tomb of Sargeras, navigating its cursed and treacherous corridors using Gul'dan's memories. He retrieved the Eye of Sargeras just as Watchers closed in, but his magic, now amplified by the artifact, was beyond their power to stop. Only Maeve survived the confrontation, severely wounded but unbroken. Burning with vengeance over the loss of her Watchers, she retreated, rallied her remaining forces, and sent for Malfurion's aid, determined to make a final stand against Illidan. Illidan emerged from the tomb reluctantly, knowing Maeve still lived and that the Eye of Sargeras alone wasn't powerful enough to strike the Lich King across such a vast distance. Searching Gul'dan's memories again, he found his answer: Dalaran. A city built atop potent arcane ley lines that could amplify his spell work. He sent Lady Vash and most of the Naga ahead to scout Dalaran while he dealt with Maeve personally, determined to eliminate the threat she posed once and for all. Illidan and his remaining forces struck Maeve and her exhausted, wounded Watchers. Knowing the battle would be their last, the Night Elves fought with grim resolve, with Maeve hoping only to land a killing blow on Illidan before the end. That hope was denied. Malfurion and Tyrande arrived with Sentinel and Druid reinforcements, having been horrified by news of Illidan's growing army and pursuit of demonic artifacts. Tyrande felt responsible for his betrayal, but did not regret freeing him. She simply understood that the friend she had known was gone, replaced by something monstrous. The reinforcements turned the tide, forcing Illidan to flee east toward Dalaran. He could have used the Eye of Sargeras against Tyrande and Malfurion to ensure his escape, but despite their enmity, he found he still couldn't bring himself to harm them. But what was happening on the other side of the world? The place that seemed abandoned and consumed by the Scourge. In the city of Quel'Thalas, the High Elves would commit themselves to a new name, a name born not from triumph, but from grief, a name meant to honor everything and everyone they had lost. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you like this kind of content, make sure to like and subscribe. And if you'd like to support the work that I'm doing, please check out my YouTube, Patreon, or Twitch memberships. And a big shout out to all the names on the screen here. You mean so much to me. Thank you so much for your help. And with that, I'll see you guys next time on the Tales of Azeroth.